Hey everybody, welcome back to Trial and Error. We are destructing our Buick Grand National today and getting it ready for the next video series where we start actually building things. But this is a fun part of the process to watch, I think. So that's what this is all about. Hang in there. I may not look like I know what I'm doing, but trust me, I don't. Either way, it should be fun to watch. Well, we are in it now, folks. Been 10 years since I pulled a body off a frame, so pretty excited. Got a whole mess of wires. I elected to just disconnect everything at the engine, leave the ECU up there for now. I did not mark much of anything, so that should be fun. So I don't know if I'm going to be using the factory ECM or if I'm going to go with the standalone. You know, the cheap side of me wants to obviously reuse what we have, but thinking long term, it's like if you're going this deep into something, maybe it just makes sense to buck up and spend the extra bucks on a true standalone. I don't know. We'll kind of see how things go. So I think part of me didn't mark the cables to make that decision easier to spend the money rather than, yeah, I do that to myself all the time. Force yourself to make the hard decision. So I don't know, we'll see what happens. Important things though, now that we have the body off the frame here, everything looks really good. It's super solid. I did find 2 areas of rust that I did not know about, and you know what, nobody else would have known about it either because you couldn't see them. On the inside, a little bit of a plate here where it's sandwiched between the frame and the body, so the only way you'd even know that there was rust there, or rot there, was if you did what I just did and pulled the body off. So not a big deal. That's an easy fix. Everything else is very solid. The floors have been somewhat replaced. They did do a section here. Yeah, not the best of work here, but also not the worst. It's sealed up. But otherwise, you know, we're solid, so that's good. Now I know I said this was a deconstruction video and I'm actually fixing things right now, but it's part of the deconstruction because I don't want this shell in the garage while I'm working on the chassis. It's just nice to have the extra space. So I figured I'll patch up the holes that I know we aren't going to use, and then I can just tape up the other ones, but it'll lessen the risk of a mouse finding his way into the body for the weeks, or maybe, I don't know how long the chassis is going to take, maybe it'll take months, but whatever that amount of time is, I don't want to have to worry about animals making it their new home and me getting a nasty surprise when we go to pull it back into the garage. So that's why we're doing this. So what I'm doing now is called basically smoothing out your firewall, and the purpose of it primarily is aesthetic. You want it to look nice and clean. But there's a secondary reason, and the reason why I plated this area is this is where your brake booster sits, as well as your gas pedal here, but more so on the brake pedal side. There was a little bit of give in this panel, partly because it had been Swiss cheesed over the years so many times, and the previous owner did cut this 2-inch hole right here. There's not a lot of structure there. So I put in some 10 gauge, heavier than what the firewall normally is. And obviously you saw me heat it and bend it into place so it fits nice. And we have some nice lines here kind of carrying this one down to catch that line. And once we skim coat this with some body filler, which we'll do over all of these patch panels, it should look really nice and clean, and that's kind of the look I was going for. I want this, the engine should be pretty beautiful in this car, so I don't want anything to take away from that. I just want a clean engine bay behind it. I will first start by torching out what I know we don't need. We're gonna end up going with, I think I'm gonna go with a 4-link. Obviously, all of this stuff is subject to change as I get into it. I may think of different ideas and different things that are not presently known, because until you start, mocking stuff up, you never really know for sure what you're doing. Or at least for me anyway, that's how that works. But we're gonna use a 4-link, so we're gonna come off of the factory lower links, but the factory lower links came in at an angle. That's partly how they triangulated the suspension. My lower links are gonna be straight, and we're gonna triangulate off the center for the upper links. Then the other option, of course, is doing like a pan hard bar setup. But I think we're gonna stick with triangulated four links. I've got experience doing that in the past. I know they work well, and suspension geometry wise, it's a little bit easier to figure out. So I think it's about time we break out the plasma cutter here and start doing some damage. For the back half here, we get a couple options. One, we can put in some temporary, weld in some temporary bracing here to hold it where we want it. Normally that's what I would do, but we're going so over the top here in terms of custom back half. I think I'm just gonna lob them off, and then I will fabricate my own to get back and reach out to the factory body mount positions back here. Because all of that's going to be tied in with the cage as well. That'll give it a lot of structural rigidity. So I'm not too worried about, you know, losing in space where these currently are. Really not worried about it. We'll get the body back on and build the cage and tie that cage into the chassis along with the body. So it's going to make all that stuff pretty readily apparent when we get to that point where things need to be. So yeah, let's cut some stuff apart. Admittedly, this does take a fair amount of cojones to just chop a frame in half. But lucky for you, I got more balls than brains, so here we are. But this is now the fun part. So all of this frame back here was inefficient, it was heavy, and it was not optimal for what we're going to be using it for. So sometimes it's just easier to hack it all off and build your own stuff from scratch. So the only measurements that I really took here was that from the front of this hole? Yeah, from the front of this hole to my axle center line is 25.5 inches. So we've got that on both sides, and that just allows me to make sure I locate my axle in the right place. But for the rest of this, I can really just build whatever I want to build now in a way that makes the most sense. So because this is going to be mostly a straight line car, what I'm most concerned about is rigidity in the frame forward of the control arms. So I ended up changing it up, and I ordered a parallel 4-link with a panhard bar for the setup, which I've never used before, but the way this frame is laid out, I think that's going to make the most sense. And then we're going to brace from this lower, well, it's really your lower and your upper all in one bracket. We're going to carry that line straight up to the front of the frame rail. It'll just help kind of hold that all together so that your wheels and your tires are just pushing on this beam as well as the new beam that we'll have here. And we'll gusset that structure up all the way up to the front. From here on back, we're going to have to make a new structure that comes up, because we're going to put in coilovers instead of the old spring suspension that was here. We're going to put in adjustable coilovers, so that'll allow us to adjust our ride height, rebound, all of that stuff. So we're going to need some decent structure up here for the car to ride on. And then from there back, it really doesn't matter what you have. So I do pick up some, it's off camera here, but some 1x3 steel, so that we're going to make our own new frame rails that'll just tie into the back bumper. And then the roll cage will come down through the trunk and tie into that as well. So it should be one very rigid, solid structure without a ton of extra weight. That's about going to wrap up the destruction phase, and we are now on to the construction phase, or at least we will be in the next video. As you can see, I picked up some parallel link bars and some raw steel as well, and we're going to get to the fun part, kind of designing our new suspension and designing the new back half of the chassis on the next video. So deconstruction is done. It is now time for the fun construction part. As always, everybody, thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, and/or criticisms, throw them down in the comment section below me. Otherwise, everybody have a great day.